All right, friends, what's up? Stobbie here with a quick little review of this update that came out on the 9th of May, which I actually kind of missed, to be honest. The release came out and I was of the DLC, and I was so keen for that, I completely forgot about this. You'll notice in the first two episodes of seasons 21 and 22, the peasant militia and cultist playthroughs, I kind of stumble upon some of these changes, but I wanted to take a few minutes just to go over the changes proper. So they talk a little about the DLC coming out. You can wishlist it here. It just tells you how to keep playing previous versions. That's not so important, and it reminds you to keep re-uploading your mods if they've been changed. But here's the actual changelog. So, added new main menu background. We've all seen that. That is the Barbarians background. Added a choice between two company origins. That's just all the company origins we've all seen before. Now here's where it starts getting interesting. Added named variants of Ancient Dead and Goblin weapons. So the Ancient Dead weapons are the Crypt Cleaver, which is the large two-handed cleaver, the War Scythe, which is any polearm user's favorite weapon. It's that big polearm that you can swing in a 3-square arc. And there is the something else. I think is it the Ronomp? It's a sword. It's a big two-handed Ancient Dead sword, but it's not that great. The main thing that's nice about the named variants of the Ancient Dead is hopefully you'll be able to get a War Scythe with a bit more base stats and hopefully some more durability, because that's the one failing of the War Scythe, that has very low durability and it breaks. And now, as far as named variants of Goblin weapons, that could be super interesting. So the Goblin weapons, like the spear and the sword, are on the lower spectrum as far as damage is concerned. But the main thing I like about the Goblin weapons is how light they are. So if you have a character who needs a backup weapon and is really hurting for his lack of fatigue, then that could be useful. What will be particularly interesting of the named variants of Goblin weapons will be to see whether the spiked bolus, the throwing weapon, has stats that puts it on par with the throwing axes. I might consider using it then if I can find a copy of named boluses. And the pole arm, I forget what it's called. It's the pole arm that only has a 4 AP attack value. Or was it 5? So you can move 2 squares and then stab with it. If you can get one of those with an extra bit of nice stats, that could be really good. Not to mention, this will hopefully also apply to the tier 3 crossbow that the Goblin War Chief carries. So a named variant of that could do very nice damage. Added additional loot items for goblins. I haven't actually seen what those are yet. I haven't fought any of these green little fucks since I've actually got into the new DLC. Sorry for the cursing, but I have a lot of trauma over the hundreds of thousands of hours I've played of Battle Brothers at the hands of goblins. Disgusting little things. So hopefully what their loot drops is, I hope it's armor, honestly. That could be super interesting. I know they actually have some chainmail, which arguably could weigh very little and have pretty decent numbers. That could be maybe usable for someone who's going for a dodgy, light armor, high hit point build. Could be interesting. Now there's a new perk called Relentless. So added new Relentless perk, which reduces the impact of fatigue on current initiative by 50%. So how this works is your initiative and your fatigue numbers are tied, in that fatigue can be higher than initiative, but your initiative will never be higher than your fatigue. So if you have 100 fatigue and 100 initiative and you use 30 fatigue on the next turn, you recover 15, it gives you 85. So your previously 100 initiative then becomes 85. With this perk though, if you have Relentless, after that you'll start the next turn with 85 fatigue, but your initiative won't be 85, it'll be halfway between 85 and 100, which is what, 92 or something. So it has a very smallish effect in the beginning. It just splits the difference between your fatigue and your initiative. This is really important for builds where you are using dodge. Dodge, remember, gives you 15% of your current initiative towards melee and ranged defense. So again, if you have 100 initiative, that's 15 ranged and melee defense. That's a round shield for free. It's really good. So for your lads who have lighter builds and are dodgy and have high hit points, that's very useful. I think this is going to be particularly useful, and I'm going to experiment with it on some of my quote-unquote junk characters who don't have real long-term potential. It's the guys who have stars, for example, in initiative but not in fatigue. So you clearly can't put them in heavy armor, but you still want them to be pretty tough on the front line or hard to hit. And a lot of times with those light armor guys, they struggle when there are ranged projectiles being shot around. So if you think of those guys on the front line, if they hold a shield, that's 15 defense, and they have 100 initiative, and they have dodge, that's an extra 15. It gets them up to 30 range defense, not including any other bonuses. And yeah, that could be pretty damn good. But then again, as your guys get more tired, that becomes less useful. It might be worth considering a build where you have dodge, relentless, fleet-footed, which is the less hit points, lower your armor, and recover and adrenaline. So your turn starts, you attack, you use recover. I think then you can use adrenaline afterwards, or adrenaline then recover, one of the two. That basically, it'll half your damage in that you will attack one round, recover the next round, attack one round, recover the next round, but at least it'll keep your defense up. Something to think about. It sounds like it needs a bit of work. So added new cultist leather hood that has 60 hit points value, and cultist leather robe, which has, I think, also 60 body armor. That's fine. I started with one or two of those on cultists. It's fine. Added paint remover for owners of the Beasts Exploration DLC, can both be bought and crafted. That's great. If you have like a blue and gold helmet and you just want it to be silver, you can chuck the paint remover on there. Added 15 new event illustrations and updated some older ones. Added ability for Wiedergängers to pick up weapons from the ground. So that isn't a huge change. I kind of operated on the assumption that they would be able to do that anyway. This just means that if you kill one, you can step over where its corpse is and pick the weapon up. Then when the Wiedergänger rises up the next turn, it won't have a weapon. Whereas previously, I believe if you killed a Wiedergänger... Oh no, I think what this means actually is if it rises up without a weapon, it can then walk onto a tile where there is a weapon and then pick one up. That's going to be interesting to see in action. So like if there's an unarmed Wiedergänger and I kill the one that has a weapon, will the unarmed one walk forward and pick up that weapon? That's super interesting. Okay, it's a cool little change. Added new auto pause after leaving city option. A bunch of people have been crying about that. It's going to relieve a lot of people. Changed named items to have attributes depending on item type. Example, named throwing weapons may have a larger stack. That's great to hear. That's one thing that ranged throwing weapons, named throwing weapons, have not been that great, and a lot of time haven't been worth the money you pay for them. So that's cool to see. Changed crafting costs of some consumables from Beast and Exploration DLC to be lower. That's nice to know. I did think that some of the costs were a bit high. Changed supply caravans to randomly carry either tools, medicine, or ammunition in a significant quantity, and trading caravans also carry those things in smaller quantities. This is for those raider type playthroughs where you want to have guys who are enemies of all of the settlements. The big problem of that previously was that you would never be able to buy tools, ammunition, or ammo. At least now, if you ambush a supply or trading caravan, you can subsist off that, hopefully. It's still going to be very hard, but it's doable. Changed the general frequency of events to be slightly higher. That's nice. Hopefully I'm not going to have to wait another 300 days to craft a master crafted bow. I'm not kidding. I've had an offline playthrough where I've had 2 pieces of lumber and a level 10 Fletcher for 300 days, and he didn't make me a master crafted bow. It's annoying. Changed Goblin City and Witch Hut to have slightly less opponents, and Kraken to have slightly less hit points, to tighten the run-up to your next challenges after the first late-game crisis has been defeated and you choose not to retire. The Black Monolith remains as challenging as ever. New campaign required to take effect. Alright, fair enough. I'm glad that they make the Goblin City a little bit easier and the Witch Hut, because the Black Monolith still needs to be the absolute hardest thing you can do, which is fair enough. So this is pretty significant. Changed ranged attacks hitting tiles other than the intended target to have their damage reduced by 25%. That's fair enough. I suppose a scattered ranged attack you could reasonably expect to do less damage. I mean, the velocity of the projectile isn't lowered IRL, but you aren't aiming it as much, so fair enough. Now this right here, this is utterly devastating to me. Changed Quick Hands perk to no longer apply to shields. That ruins me, because all of my raider builds, which are the guys who use two-handed weapons, would never take reach advantage. They would take quick hands, and they would start their turn with a shield out, get into melee combat, quick hands to the two-handed weapon, swing the two-handed weapon on the next turn, especially if they can act before the enemy. Swing the two-handed weapon again, and then get the shield up. And if you think you could do that, then you could get the 25 melee defense from a kite shield much more reliably than the +5 per enemy hit of reach advantage. So reach advantage, theoretically, the most you can get out of it is if you have a axe or a flail that you can spin in a circle. It's 1, 2, 3, that's 6 squares. So if you hit all 6, which is super unlikely, you get 6 times 5 melee defense is 30. That's only 5 more than a heater shield. More realistically, you'll have like a warhammer or a greatsword. You'll swing in an arc, hit 2 or 3, maybe kill 1, get to swing again, hit another 2, that's 4 stacks, that's 20 melee defense. So maybe it isn't overall that devastating in terms of the melee defense, but the range defense, it's going to really suck. I still think that for my two-handed guys, I'm going to, especially when there's big groups of enemies with tier 3 crossbows and warbows, I'll still start with a kite shield, but then just have to take that AP hit and drop it before they get engaged in melee combat. Inadvertently, it's kind of a buff. It's a buff of necessity for one-handed weapons, because a lot of my builds now are not becoming viable with two-handed weapons, because the brothers aren't squishy enough. Like the guys in light armor. For a while, I've wanted to build a light armor two-handed mace user, but now that kind of necessitates that I can still get the stun from the one-handed mace, although I can't get the what's that that debuff called, that the two-handed mace, dazed. So like a one-handed mace user will still be decent at crowd control. He won't do as much damage, but he'll be safer behind his shield. And I mean, if a guy's going to use a one-handed weapon, he has to then, in my opinion, get a shield expert to give him, especially to help keep a named shield not get destroyed and to get the extra melee defense from it. I mean, if I'm deciding between a duelist build and a two-handed weapon build, I'll almost always go for two-handed weapons, because the two-handed weapons have the AoE attacks, whereas all you get from duelist is an extra bit of armor piercing. So, long story short, it means I'm going to have to change up my tactics. I'm going to use shields a lot more, and maybe this means for my brothers who aren't that good with melee skill, I might start giving them shields and a whole bunch of defensive abilities like taunt, and then they can taunt the enemies that are in contact with my two-handed weapon users to take some heat off the two-handed weapon guys. Okay, so change bags and belts perk to apply to shields again. That's nice. So that is a buff then for someone who is a shield expert. So let's say you have a dagger master who starts with a kite shield when there's lots of crossbow bolts being shot at him. He then goes into melee combat. He can then quick hands to the heater shield that was in his backpack, and he doesn't suffer any downside. So that's a little buff to shield users. I like that. Change the duelist perk to still work if having a throwable tool. Example, a throwing net in the offhand. That's very nice. I've been looking for something to make the argument for using duelist. What I want to see is whether duelist will allow you to reliably apply bleed with a whip against heavily armored targets. I doubt it very much. I mean, in what I've tried with the three-handed flail with duelist, you still don't do hit point damage to an orc warrior. But that could have some synergy with duelist. That's pretty cool. I mean, you know, nets are super important. So change the resilient perk to reduce any negative status effect duration to 1 turn instead of decreasing it by 1 turn. That's pretty damn good. So with resilient, you'll only be dazed, poisoned, stunned for only 1 turn. That's pretty cool, but I can't see myself justifying taking resilient. So change the fatigue cost of adrenaline to 20, down from 25. Nice. Hopefully that'll synergize with what I want to experiment with adrenaline, as mentioned above. And change the fatigue cost of Indomitable to 25, up from 20. That's fair enough. I mean, Indomitable was 50% damage reduction, so they had to increase that. Changed Throw Net, Throw Acid Flask, and Throw Blessed Water skills to benefit from fatigue cost reduction when having the Throwing Mastery perk. That's very cool. That really is. Especially because I've been experimenting with an archer build where my archers actually take the Throwing Mastery perk and the archery perk. Then with bags and belts and quick hands, they can, you know, if they are shooting at heavily armored targets, they can quick hands to the throwing axe. And then on the next turn, quick hands to get the net into that offhand. Throw a net, throw an axe. That's really cool. I like that. This is huge as well. Changed Shoot Bolt skill of crossbows to cost 3 AP, up from 2 AP. And Reload skill to cost 4 AP, down from 7. So what this means is you can move for 2 AP, reload, and shoot on a turn. Or if you have Berserk, I believe this should be how it works. You'll start with 9 AP, shoot for 2, let's assume you get a kill. That'll take you back up to 9, reload for 4, leaving you with 5. You can then move and shoot again. Yes, so then on the next turn, you will be unloaded. You'll have 9 AP, costs you 4 to reload, you're left with 5. Let's say you shoot for 2, you're down to 3. Let's say you get a kill, you get plus 4 back, you're back up to 7. Reload, costs 4, then you can shoot again for 3. Good. So I'm fairly certain this is a very nice big buff to crossbowmen. And what it means for me is if I have a 7 up front, 5 at the back build, very often I would have 4 dedicated warbow users on the back line. But this absolutely, I think, is a worthwhile argument for having 2 archers and 2 crossbowmen. The damage of the crossbowman is fantastic when it goes through armor. And especially if you can manipulate the initiative of your archers and crossbowmen so that your crossbowmen always shoot first before your archers. That then means when you're shooting at organic targets that can be wounded, the crossbow shoots first, applies the wound, then the archer gets to go who has executioner and gets to get the damage bonus. Very cool. Very, very cool. Change stack size of spiked bolus to 6, up from 5. That's nice. The spiked bolus is a rubbish little low damage ranged thrown weapon, so increasing the stack size might argue, for you to take it a little bit. What I want to see with the spiked bolus, maybe you can see this on a named variant, is if there's a percentage chance to lower an enemy's movement chance or to apply the net effect or something like that. Because that is historically what boluses, boli, are supposed to do. To trip up your enemies and hold them in place. So that would be pretty cool. That would make me definitely want to use boluses. Change the AI to make better decisions in a variety of situations. Change the lock camera option on world map to turn off automatically when using WASD or dragging the camera. Okay. Change various minor things for the better. Well, that's vague. Fix various bugs and issues. Okay. So the main thing for me is I need to change my previously lazy builds with my two-handed weapons. Because of how quick hands has been changed, I'm going to start using more shield experts because of the change to bags and belts. And this has pretty much made it certain in my mind that for my archers, I'm actually quite happy for them to have archery mastery and thrown weapon mastery. For a long time, I've been dead set against dead perks like that. I should say a dead perk is a perk that is not active at a certain time. So if I've got throwing and archery and I'm using my bow, then for the duration that I'm shooting my bow, the point I've put into throwing mastery is a dead perk. But often enough, I'll be switching to throwing weapons for the armor shred or the armor pierce of the javelin. And then the fact that you can then hold nets in the offhand is very, very damn cool. I'm still skeptical of dedicated throwing weapon users. I still think potentially that could be quite cool on the peasant militia when you have like an 8 or a 9 person backline where you can still have your 2 archers, your 2, let's say, well, you got to have bannerman and sergeant so that you can cover everybody with morale raise. That leaves, let's say, 6 spots at the back. Throwing weapon, crossbow, archer. That could be pretty cool. I think I'm going to try that in my peasant playthrough. But for my cultist playthrough, it's still going to be a straight 7 up front, 5 at the back. The back line will be 4 archer / throwing weapon guys with a bannerman in the middle. Great changes. Overall, I think it makes the game a bit more difficult, but it's a lot of changes that make a lot of sense, and I'm very, very happy with it. Alright friends, so that's update 13012. I hope you found this interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments. If I've wrong about anything that you happen to know I'm wrong about, please let me know. And of course, come check out my playthroughs on Stobbie149 on YouTube. I'm not streaming yet on Twitch, but I will be in the next month or 2. I hope to see you guys either in the YouTube comments or watching me live on Twitch. Thanks for watching, friends. See you later.